I told a woman to sell her horse.
I will never financially recover from this.
I'm burned up.
The scam way back then.
Anxiety free.
And for that reason, I'm out.
Ask the Greeks.
Into account inflation.
Guess I'm freaking living on the edge, baby.
We have in our studio amongst ourselves George Kamel.
That's right.
George Kamel's
With a K.
And he became a millionaire without being in debt, which is pretty rare.
I never thought about that. Like
Which
the
is
debt-free millionaire.
Really rare.
Because Dave was his
How
his
did you
mentor.
do it?
How did I do it? Well, I did. Part of it is my wife, who's amazing. I think that it's underrated to have a partner that you can build wealth with that is aligned with your financial values and goals. So that's a huge part of it. But I started.
You mean the wife?
I was the average millennial, right? I grew up with immigrant parents. We talked about this.
Yep.
They fell for a lot of the money traps. Life on payments is normal. I fell for the trap of student loan debt, credit card debt. And so at 23, I found myself frustrated, 40 grand in debt, cynical toward adulthood, thinking, well, wealth is for those people, and I'm just going to stay middle class fancy forever. And then I found Dave Ramsey, went through Financial Peace University, followed the baby steps, got out of debt, which gives you this thing called hope. When I got out of debt in 18 months, I was like, holy crap, it's amazing. Like if I can get out of debt, I can get an emergency fund.
Yeah.
I can start building wealth for the future. So that's what I did. I just started investing 15%. Once I had an emergency fund into my work 401k, the Roth 401k, it was that easy. And I bought a house the right way. We had a good down payment, and we got a reasonable, modest townhome outside of Nashville. We paid it off aggressively in 26 months. That home appreciated in a few years. And so all of that added up, when you add up our investment accounts and our home, you're like, oh my gosh, we're millionaires. Like it was sort of like an accidental, like, oh my gosh, how did we get here? It's a cool milestone. But it wasn't this thing where we were like, we're going to be here by this age.
I'm kind of shocked that you guys aggressively paid down the house in 26 months, you said? Or
Yeah.
How is that possible? How much money were you guys making?
So I didn't make six figures until my wife and I combined our finances. And then finally we had a six-figure household income, and we bought a $300,000 townhome. I had owned one townhome previous, so I had a little bit of equity from that. And we aggressively saved even more down payment while our house was being built. So it was a new build construction townhome. So we had about a year until it was completed. And so I was doing side gigs. I was hosting outside events, live events across the country, and doing marketing consulting and building websites just a few years ago in order to make an extra 10, 20 grand over a summer to add to the down payment. And so we ended up putting down 45% down on this townhome. It was
that's
a
amazing.
$300,000 townhome. So we paid off a $165,000 mortgage in 26 months.
How are you guys able to get a loan on it since you don't have credit cards?
Oh, that's a great question. This is a juicy one, Andre. Very controversial.
what's the credit
We got a
score?
house without a credit score through manual underwriting.
Manual underwriting.
Yeah,
Can you explain
gotta
this?
explain. I never heard
Yeah.
that term.
So
What's going on there?
you guys love automated everything, in the AI world. This is old school. This is where the loan officer an underwriter looks at your actual financial situation. So we submitted a tax return and utility bills, and they look at your income. They look at your debt to income ratio. We had no debt, so that part's easy.
Yeah.
And they grant you the mortgage based on all of that versus pulling a credit score and the computer saying, hey, Andre's good for it, give him the loan.
I thought those were more, though, hard money lenders when they go through a manual process like that.
So there's a few lenders that do this. One of them is Churchill Mortgage, which we've partnered at Ramsey with for decades now. And so they're the number one lender that specializes in these loans, but there's lots of lenders that do it. Most of them just don't want to fool with it because it takes a little bit more time on their end.
This isn't
Yeah,
sponsored or
maybe more
anything.
human risk,
I'm
too.
just genuinely curious. This isn't sponsored. Well, do they offer competitive rates doing that?
That's
Or
the other thing. So a lot of people, Andre, they come at me saying, this guy's an idiot. You charge so much more. I got a competitive rate. And I asked them, I said, hey, how does this work comparatively to someone with a good or excellent credit score? And they said, if you so I asked them, I had the loan officer run the numbers on this. And they said, hey, if you put 10 to 20% or more down and you do a 15-year fixed rate mortgage, you will get the same rate as someone with a good to excellent credit score.
Wow,
So that's
that's
what
amazing.
this is August of 2019. Our rate was like 3.6.
That's amazing.
And so it didn't take longer. It wasn't more expensive.
I mean, actually, having a human in the loop might not make the default rates any worse. Like, if you actually have somebody looking at it, I don't know if I'd trust an automated system.
yeah.
Yeah.
When you think
Like
about
that
it,
much
as
more.
aggressively as we paid it off, even a 0.2% interest rate wouldn't have made the difference anyways.
How much of the house accounts for your millionaire status?
Ooh, that's also now we're in a new house now. That's probably worth around $800K. So that's probably 2/3 of our net worth is now in the house, which again is controversial.
Did you
People
sell
think
the
it's
other
stupid.
house, or are you renting?
We
it out?
sold that one. Yeah, we sold that one, and we rolled all of the equity into the new one.
Did you guys have to pay taxes on that?
No, because we had been in there for more than 2 years, and it wasn't over 500,000 gain.
Right,
So,
for married, right?
Exactly.
500,000 is the
life hack.
That's
Thanks,
amazing.
IRS.
That's
it's
amazing.
another thing I hadn't heard of. I
Yeah,
didn't know
so
about
that's a
that life
cool.
hack.
That's a cool
Yeah.
piece of the pie there. And so we don't. This is the only property we have. It'd be fun to own a rental property one day, but I got to pay cash. Like that's the way I roll.
You don't want to
So-
take on any debt.
No, that is my life goal, is to never touch debt again. And it's not like a nobility thing. It's just a value that I have.
Yeah.
And it's caused a much more peaceful life,
Well, it's
even if
very-
it takes longer.
It's worth it. It's very much Dave Ramsey. Like for me, I bought this house cash as well, just because I wasn't able to, get a loan on it. So I paid it off as well. And I wish I could have gotten a loan, but it's interesting that your philosophy is just purely no debt. And Dave Ramsey is the same.
Oh yeah, and people think, oh well, no, David probably no. He legitimately, the man has no debt, and he has hundreds of millions of dollars of real estate. Even the Ramsey headquarters, we built it at the speed of cash.
That's incredible.
So it was a year-long process from when he bought the land to building this,
Man.
$200 million building.
That's like when things just become like an endowment. They're just money that's just growing on money.
But it's caused the
Yeah.
company to run differently because we don't have any lenders to deal with. We don't have any debts to pay, and so we've never had layoffs. Like when things get tight, we're still running with cash, and so they have cash reserves, and we don't have any debt to pay.
What do you tell people who have credit cards that are like, well, the credit cards offer consumer protections, they give me points, rewards? What do you say to those people? Because I'm one of those people. I'm like, if I go to a restaurant, I'm going to pay with my gold Amex. If I travel,
sure.
Amex Platinum. And I have all my little tricks, and it's a little bit extra, rewards. I wouldn't say it's crazy. If I went debit tomorrow, it wouldn't change my life. But
Yeah.
a lot of people do get a lot of benefits out of
Yeah,
that.
and inflation. I mean, inflation's deadly at that point, right? It's all cash.
What do you say to people that want to use credit cards?
I mean, you can still go to heaven if you use credit cards. So I just want to make that point clear because a lot of
But
people
are you
think this is
God?
like a moral argument.
Sure.
But I worked really hard on the credit cards chapter in my new book to cover every single objection I've heard from the person who says, I've never spent a dime on interest. I pay it off every month perfectly. I get my travel rewards.
Tell me, what is it?
Stress?
There's a lot of angles. So there's 8 character archetypes I had to
Let's
lay
break
out.
them down.
So I have the rewards redeemer,
Okay.
the world traveler,
Okay.
the perfect spender, the person who's like, I've never spent it, I've never carried a balance. I pay it off perfectly every month. And so I go through like MIT studies where there was fMRI technology scanning the brain when you use a credit card to show that not only does it kind of release the brakes on spending, but it also hits the accelerator. And so it's both and. So it causes you to spend more. So the people who say, I've heard this a lot, well, I would spend just the same. It's as if I used a debit card. I'm like, no, it's not,
just
because a debit
not.
card is your money tied to your bank account, and your brain is keeping the score. Your
Right.
body knows this is my money versus someone else's money that I'll pay later.
Right.
And so the little quote I have at the end of this is, when it hurts less, it costs more. So when there's less friction, it's costing you more in the long run through more spending. And we've seen that in every study, even if you spend perfectly. But as far as rewards go, when you actually add up how much money it takes to get your percent cash back, or what the heck those points really amount to by the time they get devalued by the company, it's just not worth it for the average person. And when it is worth it for someone like you, right, who's, has a great income, can spend as much as they want, at that point, you don't need the credit card companies. And so it's a little game for you at that point.
It is, yeah. And I would say...
But it's not changing your life at all.
Not at all. But I do like the protection aspect of it.
So I talk about the protection, the fraud protector is what I call that character. That's you.
Okay.
So you're the fraud protector. And if your debit card says Visa or MasterCard, you're already covered by their zero liability policy with
Right.
a debit card. So there's a Electronic Fund Transfer Act that covers debit cards. And so you're fully protected. Yes, it's your money. Let's say there was fraud. They took out, $500 from your account. Well, if you report that within 60 days, the bank legally has to issue that money back to you as a credit while they, a provisional credit while they investigate.
Right. Is there any studies that show that for debit cards, they're not as vigilant about getting that money since it's technically
or
yours?
Any additional benefits to the credit card, or?
I mean, of course, sometimes they're like, we'll include this warranty if you use our credit card.
Right.
But honestly, with a debit card, and for privacy reasons, when it comes to fraud, a tool that I use, not sponsored, but privacy.com is an amazing company that issues virtual debit card numbers. That's tied
cool.
to your debit card.
Yeah.
But it creates a new number that you can use on certain sites with parameters. So you could set a spending limit. You could say this is a one-time use.
Right.
You could say this card expires at this date. And so I use that when I shop online just as a layer of protection.
Yeah, I've started liking that too.
But it's a really cool tool. But overall, the argument is overblown that if you're going to use a debit card, it's so much riskier.
Right.
Like, I guess I'm freaking living on the edge, baby. Using because I have a singular debit card and I have my Ramsey business debit card. That's
Do you
it.
have a FICO score? Do you know what your FICO score is?
I don't have one. Since we paid off our mortgage, I believe it's probably now become indeterminable again.
Right. Okay.
And so 6 to 12 months after you close all your accounts, it becomes indeterminable. So we didn't have one, then we got the mortgage, then we paid it off. And so I probably had one for a short period of time there. But now, I mean, people also, I have the first chapter in the book's on credit scores. Because that I feel like is the gateway drug to other types of debt.
I would say so.
And so now people are like, how are you going to live without your credit score? I'm like, why do I need it? I have great insurance rates because I shop with an independent broker through Xander Insurance, who's also been a partner with Ramsey for a long time. I don't have car debt.
So I feel like this is something I have to catch up on because I'm so much in the credit card consumer type world.
Yeah.
Where it's like, for me, it's kind of like a game. It's good to have a score than not have one at all. But I feel like you found so many alternate solutions and you guys have partnered with where it's like they'll still accept you if they do these manual
give me a reason
reviews.
why you would need a credit score outside of, like, I told you about the mortgage.
Yeah.
Didn't have a credit score. I did that.
Well, I don't know. Would we
Renting
have one
cars.
here?
Just to get a credit card. That's the only thing I can
Well,
think
would
of.
we have
To get
like,
more
why
debt.
not you have to get more credit?
Think about it. Like, that's the scam in my
It's like
brain.
the
I'm
only
like,
thing
why
that
do you
comes
need
to
a
my
credit
mind.
score? Well, to have access to more debt at better
Yeah.
rates.
I would
like
say
when I got my car, when
an
I got my new
easier
credit
ability
card.
But if
to
you decide I'm
leverage.
going to pay cash for the car and I'm going to use a debit card,
No,
it's like, that's
what's the point?
A useless tool at that point.
Right.
I gotta admit, you're convincing me.
I would say
I'm
leverage.
gonna go
working.
cut that thing up
Leverage,
right now.
leverage. I would say is the best thing.
Cut it up live on this show.
Not yet. Not yet. Let me come to
No,
grips
I would
with
say
it.
That would
just
be so
leverage,
good.
leverage for building your wealth if you want to leverage debt. Which I will say I'm between you and Graham. Where like I don't want to leverage to a crazy degree, and I'm not saying Graham is over leveraged or anything, but
he's
it's-
still pretty frugal and wise.
Yeah, exactly.
Even
but
with his leveraging.
not to where it's like no leverage at all. I want some leverage such that I can at least fight inflation or something.
Well, to me, leverage is having no payments.
Yeah.
And so I have my income to leverage. I don't need the lender's money to leverage it. I'm just going to use my income to now invest 50% into the S&P or max out
Sure.
retirement accounts.
Does your tune change when it comes to businesses? I mean, business get debt allows you to build something that should be more productive for the economy in the long run, and then would you say go for it?
Well, I'll tell you how Dave built this place. From a card table in his living room to now 1,000 employees and this massive building, he did it all with cash because he got burnt. He famously went through bankruptcy back in the 80s. And so I've only seen businesses prosper when they do it without debt. Now, have businesses, they're like, well, look at Apple and Amazon and look, you can point to very successful companies that made it. But it wasn't the debt that did it for them. It was, their
But
business.
the average mom and pop that maybe wants to open a restaurant or something
Exactly.
or a coffee shop, you would say don't do any of that with.
Because what
even a
I've seen is
small
I've
amount
seen
of
the
debt.
awful stories when they're like, we're drowning in business debt. The business failed and we still owe $300,000. That breaks your heart because there's
Right.
no
Yeah.
climbing out of that.
Yeah.
But when you do it debt free and you do it at the speed of cash, it's going to take longer. It's going to be harder, but you're reducing your risk by a huge factorial there. And so we have a whole brand called Andrei Leadership, which is how Dave coaches other business owners to launch and start businesses. And we preach in there that, like, if you want financial peace for business, you got to run your business debt free. And what's amazing is we have these events where thousands of people show up who are all running their businesses by these principles, and they are flourishing. And they're laying off less people because they don't have to make payments when times are tough.
Did you say Andrei Leadership?
Entree leadership. Although
That's all I
entree
heard.
leadership, there's something
now.
to
It's
that. That's
got
a
a ring.
freebie. That one's on me. So
That's
yeah, it's really
cool.
good.
It's
I think it's
interesting.
inspiring to see people do it debt
I
free.
agree with
Okay.
all of this philosophy. Like I don't think it's as controversial as it's so crazy that in the finance world that is a controversial.
It's swimming
hot
upstream
take.
to tell
It's-
someone to not leverage
Yeah,
debt.
that's such a crazy thing. It shouldn't be.
It just seems like the one place where you should take on debt would be real estate. It just feels like the government has put too many benefits in place. So how do you argue against that one?
Real estate.
When it comes to real estate debt, like as far as investing
Just
goes?
getting a mortgage.
Yeah.
Well, I've seen a lot of people who do it thinking it's going to work out perfectly on paper, and then it doesn't. And the stories you see on TikTok are all the successful ones, and they're all telling you to buy their course to show you how to do it too. What you don't see is the amount of lives that are ruined, and when it doesn't go well, and when they don't have an emergency fund, and they're straddled with debt, and all of a sudden their life isn't as great as they thought it would be because of all the risk that's added on.
But what about the yearly tax day? Isn't there a benefit to having paid a mortgage all year for the average person?
Oh, like the interest
you're missing
deductions and
out?
all of that?
Right.
Well, what it really amounts to is stepping over $1 to pick up a quarter. So it's like, I don't want to send $10,000. I don't want to send $2,500 to the IRS. So I'll send $10,000 to the lender. That doesn't make sense. That's not good math.
Right.
You know what I mean?
They're picking up that interest.
Because that's exactly, you're not getting the full deduction. You're getting your tax bracket.
It's like
deduction.
the saying. It's like, oh, you got to pay an extra $1 to save 10 cents, but you have to spend the extra $1 that you otherwise wouldn't have spent in the
Then
first
you also
place.
might be living in a house where you don't have to pay that money to a renter. So it kind of depends on if you buy the house to live in it also, right?
Oh, I see what you're saying. If you're like buying it, but then you rent it
Yeah,
a
just for
room
people
or
who are
something
getting
like that.
started in life.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen the house hacking thing work for some people where they go, I'm going to buy this property. But if they can't afford it on their own, I still say don't do it. If you can afford it on your own and then you want to get a roommate, like our friend Jack Selby does that. Like if his roommate's all ditched, he could still afford the mortgage payment. But people are over leveraging going, I'll find roommates and it'll work out perfectly. And then all of a sudden they have a tenant issue. And they're like, that happened. A guy called in from New York who had done that, young guy. And he was like, I don't know what to do. I co-signed with this like coworker of mine on this place, and I have to refinance now, but I can't afford it to refinance at the current rates. And it puts people in a real financial bind when they're not financially prepared to take on the mortgage for themselves.
Plus, if you're never taking on debt, then you're just never taking that. It's not like a gateway drug to like, I should play with options a little bit, or I should like take on some other types of risk.
Yeah, that part of my brain is just like my risk meter.
Yeah, it's just a, do I have it? Can I spend it mentality.
I just sleep
through and
better
through.
at night, not worrying about what the heck interest rates are going to do. Truthfully,
That makes sense.
It's a great feeling to have.
What else did you learn from those brain scans?
Oh my gosh! So this study because it's been a lot of like our opinions, you know what I mean, at Ramsey, and people are like, well, they just say you spend more, but to then look at like, no, Harvard, MIT, all these people are saying like the debt snowball method is the way that actually works to pay off debt. Using a credit card will increase the way you spend.
Right.
And so I can find it for you because it'll get more interesting.
Well, what are some other things that you learned from Dave that you feel like sort of made
okay.
you the person that you are today?
Oh man. Well, one is about wealth. Like I had a lot of misconceptions about wealth, and Dave has been instrumental in showing me what wealth can be, what it should be, what generosity can look like, what legacy should look like.
Can you give us some examples of what money should be?
Well, people think like if you're wealthy, then like you're evil. Like people they've misconstrued it.
That's not true.
To go, wealth equals evil. Like if you made a
yes.
lot of money, you did it on the backs of other people.
Right.
Yeah.
And it hurt other people. And Dave has found that there's a high correlation of integrity and wealth. And so the people he hangs around, no one scammed anyone into this money. Mm-hmm. They had a business that, had a great service or product to people, and they exchanged money for that, and they became wealthy through that, or wise investments. And so he helped me see that like wealth is not evil and money is amoral, and it's just a tool.
Right.
It's a brick that can build a school or it can break a window. So that was one piece of it. The other is that we're stewards of the money that we do have. So with a faith underpinning, it changes things. With Dave being, an evangelical Christian, we see this money as something to be stewarded. So that, hey, God has blessed us with this income and this world that we live in, this economy in the U.S., and so we're stewards of this $50,000 that we made. How are we going to use it wisely? And so instead of thinking like, how do I use this to benefit myself, it's, okay, how do I make this money turn into more money? How do I bless others with this money? And so that's been a lesson I've been learning as Dave has been giving me money to give away, which has been really fun during the holiday season. And so we just gave away $10,000 at 3 Waffle Houses on my YouTube channel.
Style.
It was just like in 3 hours, I gave away $10,000. And even though it wasn't my money, like, it changed my physiology. Like to see someone react like that and to be in tears and to hear their stories of like people in need, It changes the way you see money. It's not this thing where it's like, well, why wouldn't I invest that money? Because that's the mentality of a lot of people who want to build wealth. It's heavy on the saving side, but maybe they're not good at spending and enjoying it, or maybe they're not good at generosity. And so Dave has taught me there's only 3 things you can do with money: give it, save it, spend it. But the most important is giving is the most fun you can have with money.
That's a great point.
And so spending is fun. It's great to have nice things and have experiences, but giving is what I want to get to. And so my wife and I have aggressive giving goals to where, like, what if we could cover adoption fees for a family that really, like, they can't have a kid. They'd love to have a family. Like, that would be an amazing thing to be a part of.
Yeah.
Or what if I could buy a single mom or a single parent a car to get their kids around safely because their car's, burnt out, and $5,000 would change her life. That's where I feel like it puts a smile on your face. That's why we love Mr. Beast, and he's like curing blindness, and people are like, he shouldn't do that.
Well, the thing about wealth is it feels so good when it goes to the right people or people in need, and it just, whether they earned it or not, sometimes it feels hard for me to get along with somebody who maybe inherited a lot of money without earning it on their own. Or, like, do you have thoughts on inheritance taxes, or when CEOs become like so much more wealthy than the average person at their company that it just seems
like it just feels
so
unfair,
disproportionate that it's not really just about the entrepreneurship anymore?
Well, I think the comparison is always going to end up with you drinking the poison of you going like, well, they shouldn't have that much money. It's just inhumane for a CEO to make this much money. And it's like, that's fine for me to have that thought, but it really is not a comparison game. Like, there's CEOs that are going to make $50 million this year. Is that unfair because I don't make $50 million? Sure. But, like, you go be a CEO then. You take on the responsibility and do what it takes to get there. And so while there are, there's nepotism all over, I think the majority of the time it's our own envy and discontentment that's causing a lot of this, and we all just need to run our own race. We're not all going to be $50 million CEO. Some of us are just going to have to be Andrei.
Yeah.
We have to settle for being Andrei.
And it's just not,
or even worse, being George.
And it's just not on the government in any way you think to get involved. Just let
to like tax more, like to tax more and all that. That whole like tax the rich.
Or some kind of mechanism, yeah. Or like inheritance taxes being higher, or
I mean, to me, like making more and paying more, like, Dave Ramsey pays a buttload of taxes. Are there legal ways that you can reduce taxes and all that? Yes. Are there uber rich people who somehow avoid it all through legal means? Sure. Is that frustrating that the average middle class person might pay more taxes? Sure. But I don't get involved with like what I'm of the camp that I want as little government involvement as possible. Yeah. Because they tend to mess things up more than they help. So I'm all for lower taxation.
In favor of a flat tax? Maybe something more basic instead of such a complex tax code.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Sort of been twisted around for years of lobbying.
Yeah. Well, even just the confusion around taxes. I think more people would pay their fair share if they just understood it. But the way the current tax system is so freaking complicated that you need a degree to figure it out. I mean, if you look at the tax code, it's like this
I know,
thick.
It's crazy.
Like, who's reading that?
Just experts who get paid by the hour to do that.
Yeah.
What do you think is the biggest wealth killer?
Oh, man. Currently, I think it's cars.
Yeah.
I did a video that was called "This is America's Wealth Killer," and it blew up. And I was shocked to see how many people agreed with me, because I'm in the camp of never have a car payment, never ever, don't do it. It's not necessary. And I understand there's broke people who are like, well, "What do you want me to do?" Well, what you shouldn't do is go finance a $35,000 car because you couldn't afford a $5,000 car. That's what's happening.
How do you guys, like you and Dave, how do you shock people into asking the right questions or understanding it? Because I assume most people that obviously call you guys, they're already asking the right question. And the way that I try to do it in my YouTube videos, I might show people a magic trick, or I might use humor. But what have you found is like the most effective way to get people to be like, huh, he's right, I shouldn't do that. I should just drive a beater of a car. But why do people still get themselves into so much debt?
That is the hardest thing to do in a 7-minute radio call, to change someone's entire paradigm. And so usually what I do is I will, whatever their energy is, I will go like a whole nother route. So if they're coming at it mathematically, I'll go emotionally. If they're coming at me emotionally, I'll go mathematically. Because trying to match their energy normally isn't going to help. If you want to be a math nerd and tell me about how you're going to keep your debt, I'm going to talk about living a peaceful life with less anxiety.
Well, one of the other tricks is a lot of the reasons people spend money in kind of ridiculous ways, whether it be like Starbucks or fast cars, is from social pressures that are hard to address on like a radio conversation. You'd have to think what does this person want in the world? Like, what is their social group like? It's just difficult.
I have a whole
to get into
chapter
that.
in the book on marketing and consumerism, and then a later chapter on how spending is self-control, which is kind of the antidote to all that. Because I think a lot of it stems from social pressure that our parents' generation didn't have. So it's easy for them to be like, you kids spending $7 on your lattes. Like, we didn't know what our neighbors were doing. Like, all you knew is, like, Andre knew what his neighbor was driving, and that's it. Now I know what everyone in the world is driving, where they're going to, where they're traveling, because I can just scroll on Instagram and hate my life in seconds. So it's a
social
different
media
environment.
is increasing frivolous spending.
Yes. Like, think about it.
Of course, it makes sense. I
Why
just
would
haven't
you
thought about it
flex
that way.
against your neighbor, but now you're flexing against
now
the
you're
world?
flexing on TikTok is
Yeah.
so much harder.
Well, what do you say to people that are like, oh, well, it's all this inflation, and it's like when my parents were my age, they were
Oh
able to
my
buy a
gosh.
house for
blame the
2
government.
raspberries, and here I am, you know.
Yeah, there's this guy. His name's Freddie.
Yeah, this is a great
I've seen that
example.
comedian. That's such a great. Is that the clip you're talking about?
Yeah.
There's this guy Freddie on Instagram who makes these videos that just riling people up.
Yep.
And he's like, back in 1940, you could afford a house for $14, and life's so unfair now. I'm like, bro, you want to go back to 1940 and live life then? Like, he's talking about the Great Depression and how, like, we're in a worse depression now. I'm like,
Yeah.
as we tweet from our smartphones about how hard our life is.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so, like, our standard of living has just changed.
Right.
Now we don't
Yeah.
want to step into a house that doesn't have granite
The
countertops.
hedonic treadmill is powerful.
Yeah. So it's a very different life. And so I think part of it is comparisons. I think the greatest superpower we can have is not caring about what other people think.
Right.
And like you've talked a lot about on your channel about how, you know, you're kind of this financial minimalist and less is more. And,
Yeah.
you know, I'm a big fan of the minimalists, what those guys are doing to
Yeah.
try to help people kind of fight against this consumerist culture where our garages have become storage units and we have to park in the driveway because we can't fit our cars in there because we have too much crap.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Are you parking in the garage? Please tell me you're a
I
garage
am.
parker.
Of course I am.
Yeah, he just got rid of a giant fridge. That was a second fridge that didn't work.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
The second fridge. That's the new American dream.
So would you say the antidote is just to get rid of social media as sort of an essential step?
I mean,
Or curate it in
that's
a different way.
I think it's almost like if you're an addict, one of the best things you can do is just quit it. But
Cut it
telling
off,
everyone
yeah.
to get off Instagram, I think it's not going to happen. I think the better thing to do is to use social media as a tool and use it wisely and unfollow all the crap that's causing you to feel this way and find new friends that don't cause you to go buy a new car because you feel like you need to flex on them. And so it's learning how to live a life of contentment versus like ditching every input known to man. I think we'd lead healthier lives if we could all get off social media. Let's be honest.
Agreed, for sure. What have you guys found? Do you have any stories that's just stand out to you that people call from the Ramsey Show and they just tell you stories of, I don't know, their debt payments or their cars or some crazy stories that stand out to you over the last decade? Yeah.
A very recent one was this couple. They actually did their debt-free scream on the show apparently a few years ago. They told us this about 5 minutes into the call, and I was flabbergasted. Here's why I was so flabbergasted. The call was about how they are underwater on 3 different cars because they bought them all to do Turo as a money-making scheme to rent out. And now they're so far underwater on these cars that the whole business is tanking and they can't get rid of these cars because they're 20 grand underwater on each one.
Oh, but they thought each one was an investment. But
Exactly.
they didn't have the knowledge about which cars would be invested or the app wasn't.
Which goes back to my point about business debt. They were going into debt thinking, well, this is a business.
You're right, but if you had owned that one car in the first place instead of 3 cars
If you
on
start with
debt,
cash and own one car and then use that money to get the next car in cash and the next car in cash.
Or you would have at least found out that with that one car in cash, you could make money on it. So don't buy another one.
Yes.
and very quickly realized this wasn't the right method to make money.
Exactly.
Been
So
out
there's
of-
some
out of
heartbreaking
it.
ones. A funnier one that it was a miss on my part. I told a woman to sell her horse.
Sell her course?
Her horse.
Horse.
Or her horse.
A literal horse. So this girl Katie
giddy
lives
up,
in
you know?
Kentucky, rural area of Kentucky. She's making 36 grand at her full-time job working
was
for
it worth a
USDA.
fortune? I can't wait to hear this ends.
She was over 100 grand in debt, making 36 grand. So just from a math standpoint, I was like, it's going to take her forever.
Yeah.
And she had lost her side hustle of horse riding. Like people would come and ride the horse and she was making $300 a month. And I was like, that's $3,600 a year. And now she can't. The horse is out of commission with an injury. She has expensive specialized vet bills. And so in my mind, I was like, well, you have this other horse. She's like, yeah, the horse is probably worth 10 grand. It's a prize winning horse. I was like, I'm going to challenge you. I was at the end of the call. I was at the end of my rope. I was like, I'm going to challenge you, Katie. Could you sell the horse? And she was like, no, it's like family. I've had it for 11 years. And this is where
It's like selling your bulldogs.
I went over the line. And here's what I said to her at the end of the call. I said, Katie, the horse doesn't even know your name. And that's when my co-host, Rachel Cruz, was like, no, George, you can't say that. And I felt terrible, and it was an unkind thing to say. And what I didn't realize was the horse community was going to come after me.
The horse community.
There's an equestrian community that is very passionate that thought I was way out of line.
It's like
and
half
so
our user base, bro.
I apologize to Katie. I met her at a live event. She was so sweet, and we're friends now.
Did she end up selling it?
She did not. She got another horse, though.
Oh, well, at least did it help her with her income?
I don't think that helped. But she's on the path. She's following the baby steps. She's going to get there.
She loves horses.
But that was one, like, there's some regret sometimes when you're live on the radio and then it's just on YouTube forever until you die.
That's
a lot of
proprietary information to ask what the baby steps are? Like, could you share it?
I can share that.
Okay.
If you're willing, right here?
Yeah.
All right. Here we go. So that's the don't know. The baby steps are something Dave kind of formulated. He didn't invent these steps. He just packaged them in such a way that was simple to understand. Baby step 1, a starter emergency fund of $1,000. Baby step 2, pay off all consumer debt using the debt snowball method. So smallest to largest balance, ignoring the interest rate. Consumer debt. Once you have that all paid off, baby step 3, get a fully funded emergency fund of 3 to 6 months of expenses in place. Baby step 4, begin investing 15% of your income into retirement accounts. Baby step 5, save for college if you have kids. And baby step 6, pay off the house early with extra principal payments, and that leads you to baby step 7, which is build wealth and give. That's the choose your own adventure we talked about, where you get to give outrageously, you get to continue building wealth, you can invest way beyond 15%, and hopefully become a multi-millionaire philanthropist.
Do you and Dave agree on how to invest?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I invest the same way Dave does.
Which is?
Mutual funds in a retirement account, diversified across 4 types.
Drop the hot stocks.
I wish I could tell you. I'm so like, I invest in, there's growth, aggressive growth, international.
So you're doing target date funds?
No.
Oh.
These are just, these are funds that sort of, they mirror a lot of the S&P 500, but they're actively managed through retirement accounts, you know, like.
Why would you do actively managed ones?
Yeah.
Well, if you look at most 401ks, like ours has actively managed mutual funds, and our hot take, and it's not always true, but we found that a lot of the actively managed funds, the goal is to beat the S&P 500. The S&P 500 is just a mirror, it's an index, it's just doing what the market is doing.
Right.
The goal of these actively managed funds, of course, is to try to beat that market by a few percentage points. You know, obviously, that's not always going to happen. There's going to be years and times and funds that don't beat it.
For some reason, I'm so surprised and shocked that you would pick actively managed funds.
That's for retirement. That's for long term. The hope is that you can beat it. Now, Dave's not against index funds. He invests in index funds in brokerage accounts. So when he's saving up, if he gets a bonus check from a book, for example, he'll park that in index funds. And then once he sees a property he likes, that's a good deal, he'll cash it out and buy that property. So I'm not anti-index. I'm not like, you better do mutual funds or else. It's such a nerdy, wonderful conversation to argue about mutual or index.
Yeah, we're talking about minutiae to that point. But do you know the expense ratios on any of those?
I haven't looked into it. I know in the 401k, I mean, it kind of is what it is with your 401k plan. There's not a lot I can do about that, but it's not enough to deter me from investing.
It's not
there.
Like 1% or anything?
No.
Okay.
No, it's definitely not that high. And the whole industry, you know, when it comes to financial advisors, they've moved largely away from the, you know, front load funds and more into the AUMs.
Right.
Assets under management, you know, the classic 1% or whatever. But for the average investor, you know, Vanguard did a study where they showed that the average investor will make 3% more by working with a pro. And it's because of people spooked by the market. And you talk a lot about this on your channel, of people getting spooked, pulling all their money out at the worst possible time, staying out of the game too long instead of just staying the course. So I do think there's a lot of value in a pro. Most people aren't the DIY type.
Right.
You, of course, are, because you're studying this day in and day out.
Right.
But for the average person, I think having a pro in your corner is a great thing to do.
That makes sense. Can you give us a breakdown of your portfolio?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's so boring, I think it will offend most of your
Finance
listeners.
should be boring.
Yeah.
We love pie charts.
I legitimately, my wife and I have our Ramsey Roth 401k.
Okay.
That's diversified across 4 types. in our plan, and that amounts to probably $250,000 for me, over $100,000 for her.
That's amazing.
And I have a Roth IRA from I was an Apple Store employee. If you can't tell, I look like every Apple Store employee.
You, dude. The Apple genius.
If AI could just merge every employee from the Apple Store into one person, it would be me. So that Roth IRA,
geniuses.
I have not touched it. I just rolled it over, and I have not touched it. So
Yeah.
there's probably like $6,000 in there.
Okay.
And that's literally all of my investments right now.
Mm-hmm. And the house.
And then the house. And so people are like, why would you have all of it's all tied up in retirement accounts in your house? And I'm like, I'm not trying to retire today. Like, I'm
Right.
still working.
Right.
And we have all of our income at our disposal to go on vacations and to invest more. And so, maxing out retirement accounts and now looking into other options, backdoor Roth, mega backdoor Roth, brokerage accounts. I'm excited to do that. I started a 529 plan for my baby girl.
Yeah, that's
So
nice.
we've got, $3,500 in there. She's going to go to college debt free.
That's really cool.
18 years from now, who knows what college will cost, and if she even wants to go, maybe she'll become a YouTuber, and it will all be a waste, and we'll roll it all over.
I feel insulted.
So, no offense. Hopefully, YouTube exists 18
I
years from
hope
now,
so.
or else we're out of a job, man.
Yeah, that would suck.
But that's pretty much it. It's that boring.
What do you say? Do you have any comments or people that call you guys and you're like, let me tell you about crypto? You guys don't get it.
Yeah, I mean, truly, I'm not smart enough to understand it, and we always tell people, don't invest in things you don't understand. So people are still, like Graham and Jack are always like, no, but really, you don't have any crypto? I'm like, no. And it's not that I don't believe it. Like, you can do well with crypto. It's just not something. It's like being like, you don't gamble? I'm like, no, I'm just not interested. Like, I like to keep my money.
Yeah.
And the anxiety of watching something 24/7 would be too much for me.
That's fair.
Like, I check my 401k like once every few months. I'm like, okay. Not
Right.
touching it, so who cares?
Right.
With crypto, there's too much emotional anxiety for someone who's already high anxiety.
Right.
And so I just stay away from it. Will I ever have regret one day? Like, I should have gotten Bitcoin in 28. I really don't. It doesn't change how I sleep at night, knowing what could have been.
I love that philosophy because there's so many times where I remember doing my dividend stock videos, and these are very boring, like unsexy investments. And this is back when Tesla's popping off and all the QQQ was going crazy and yeah, and it's just, and people are like, oh, you're such an idiot for not having Tesla and tech stocks. And I'm just like, listen, they're great stocks. I don't need to pick I don't need to bet on every horse.
Yes.
And if I miss out, that's okay.
I call this JOMO. So there's FOMO, the fear of missing out. And then I like to have what I call JOMO, the joy of missing out. It's that simple.
That's cool.
I just have a joy and peace of going like, it's fine if I'm
Right.
not in every single thing.
Exactly.
I don't own any single stock. I don't own any crypto. I literally just have retirement accounts, and I'm in an emergency fund in my checking account, and we just live our life.
Your
Right.
whole investment philosophy is just like anxiety free.
Yes.
I love that.
And that means I'm going to go slower. I'm going to be the tortoise and not the hare. And that's the whole, I have a chapter called Wealth is Patience in the book, where that's pretty much the thesis of I'm playing the long game, and it's slower, and it's so boring that it looks unsexy to the public.
Right.
And I'm okay with that, and I think you should be too. Because I think anyone can build wealth that way. Now, some people can build wealth the other way.
Mm-hmm.
They can be the hare, and they can get in Tesla at the right time and time the market and get the right crypto at the right time, and you're the Dogecoin millionaire that somehow did it. But for the rest of us who just want to sleep at night and go on vacation and have kids and be able to afford band camp, I just feel like the peaceful way is the best way.
I agree. It really is the best way. And the way that I figured it with myself is like the JOMO of it all, the joy of missing out.
The JOMO of it all.
Yeah, the JOMO of it all is that it's kind of like right now I'm sure there's about 1,000 people in the Las Vegas casinos that are hitting like crazy jackpots or whatever it is. I don't have this fear of missing out, even though I know they're gambling away their money and they're winning. That's fine. But I don't have to gamble on every single aspect of finances. But it's interesting how much of us exist on this spectrum of like, I have a little bit of crypto. And I know there's people that look at my portfolio and they're like, wow, you're an idiot. You don't have more Bitcoin.
You should have more.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's people that are like, why do you have any at all? You're an idiot. There is no right answer.
Yeah. When people think I'm anti-crypto and that it's like I follow the Dave line because Dave doesn't like crypto. We're not even anti-crypto. It probably is going to be around until the day I die. But it's still not something I'm going to tell I'm not going to tell my mom to go invest in crypto just because I think it's going to take off. You know, I want my mom to have a great retirement, and
Yeah.
I don't want to be responsible when Doge drops. Like I had a family member, a cousin that put all of their life savings in Dogecoin.
Life savings.
400 grand.
Oh my goodness.
And now it's down to like 50 grand. No. And to me, like the emotions around that, like you'll never recover emotionally, you know?
I will never financially recover from
Exactly.
this.
Now, he'll be okay. He'll be okay. He's a surgeon. He's doing great. But still, like, that's not going to happen in my 401k.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, it's not going to get decimated to that amount.
Do you have any alternative investments that you maybe hold that you justify as
Pokemon cards?
Yeah, like Pokemon cards?
I literally don't think I own anything of value other than I like won a guitar in a lyric contest. So that's probably worth like $2,000.
That's cool.
That's probably like the nicest thing I own other than our vehicles.
Is that because
It's
you
all
just
very
don't care
practical.
for it, or?
Yeah, I mean, like we're bougie in some ways. Like we love a beautiful home, and so we're willing to spend the money on that. But as far as like alternative investments, I never look at something and go like, I'm going to buy that as an investment. You know what I mean? Like investing is for investments. Stuff is stuff.
So what do you think of like Pokemon cards or Graham's cars or?
Graham's car is that's a different issue. We'll get to that. But Pokemon cards, to me, I'm like, you know, if you want to invest in something you're really passionate about, I say do it as a hobby, but don't look at it as your financial plan.
Right.
And because you just don't know what's going to happen. And so we've had calls where someone goes, I have $70,000 in Pokemon cards, but they're also $50,000 in debt and about to have a baby. And I'm
Right.
like, dude, sell the cards. Like, be a man, be a father.
Like Charizard,
Like, that life is
75,
over.
I can't.
Yeah.
But they can't emotionally get rid of it. And so I think when you're fighting
Pikachu
over like
doesn't
the
even know
Pokemon
your
cards
name.
or your newborn baby,
Yeah.
like you got your priorities out of whack.
That's the caveat that I feel like I have a hard time in my videos because I'm afraid of sounding like a broken record, but I know if I don't say it, people will take it out of context, which is like, hey, if you have $70,000 in Pokemon cards, you better have like $500,000 to $1 million in your 401k then. Like,
Yes.
let's make sure that it's all
the
reasonable.
majority of your wealth is in Pokemon cards. You're doing
Something's
it
wrong, right? Yeah.
unless it's a millions of dollars, in which case get in touch.
So what about cars?
especially
Cars, I don't
Graham's.
see
What about
cars as an
Graham's car?
investment.
What was that about?
Graham says his cars are an investment, but you know,
You're gonna
I
go-
think
you
cars
take issue
will
with that?
eventually have issues and they'll rust and things will go wrong and that car won't be cool anymore. And so, you know, he's done very well with it as far as an investment goes. Like he says it's worth this much now, and things are only worth what people are willing to pay for it at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
And so I hope he makes good money off of it, but it's not something, you know, I'm not at a place where we have so many cars that one of them is an investment.
Right.
And the way I drive, you know, it's not going to go well for me.
Sure.
I want to drive a car for utility and enjoyment, not as an art piece that's an investment that I need to go up in value.
Do you have any ways that you guys spend money that's kind of a splurge for you that is maybe more irresponsible?
Yeah, I would say eating out. Like once we became debt free, no mortgage payment, nothing, we were more open handed with like, let's spend this money on a car. So once I paid off the house, I was driving a $6,000 09 Civic with the bumper hanging off. Dave Ramsey was making fun of me. He was like, I pay too much to drive that piece of crap. But I had a goal. I need a carrot dangling. And so I said, once we pay off the house, I'll upgrade the car. And that's what I did. And even upgrading for me, I went to a 2013 Model S Tesla. This is in 2021. And so that was the biggest thing I'd ever purchased outside of a house at that point. That was like $23,000. And so that was a big splurge for me. We just bought my wife and her a new mom car because we just had a baby. She had a really hard year. And I was like, get the car you really want. We're doing it with cash. Get the one you want. So we researched for a long time and found her a BMW X5
Oh, it's
that
a
was
nice car.
used
It's a nice car.
across the country. And it was a great purchase. And so that to me is like writing that check while it hurt. It was like, this is pretty cool, the stuff we get to do now that we're debt free, no mortgage or anything.
It's interesting how you dangle those things in your own mind and you set up your own life to be in stages. Like when I get to that, then I'll buy that, then this. That must be part of your strategy for wealth,
Yeah, I don't know. Like
suppose?
I hate sometimes that I have to always have like the next thing because I just want to be content in the moment. But there's always that thing of like, but there's always a next thing and you always want to grow. But I think we're getting to the point where the goals have become less like stair-stepped and more wide. Of like, what kind of legacy do we want to leave?
People in your family and your future.
Exactly. It's more
kids,
about
dad, and
experiences
stuff.
now versus stuff. Like I feel like when you're young, it's like I want to have stuff, and when you get older, like you were telling me, you're going to go on this amazing vacation with your family, and like that experience is going to mean more to you than like the next watch or car that you buy. And so that's, I think, and now that I have a baby, like it just changes the way you view things. Like this, my life is now not just about me. And it's not even just about me and my wife. It's now about this little girl who I'm raising in this chaotic, wild world, and I want her to be a good person who's generous and a person of character. And it goes beyond money. But not having money as an obstacle is going to allow us to do some amazing things. And she's not going to grow up watching us fight about money or stressed about money.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Is that common? Like, do people who seem to have money problems also seem to be growing up in environments where parents were fighting about money?
We've seen a
What's
lot
the
of
correlation with
generational
families
cycles.
and
so
Yeah.
it's, if your parents were like this, you tend to be like this. And Andrei was sharing with me, he went the opposite way his parents went. And so that's the best case scenario, where you grow up in, maybe it's not a amazing environment financially, but you go, I don't want to make the same mistakes my parents did, so I'm going to go this direction. And that's something that's harder to do, honestly. It's easier to go like, well, this is how my parents did it, and so we're going to always struggle with money too. We'll always have a car payment too.
Do you feel on balance that stereotype kind of does fit? Like, rich parents kind of have kids that are bad with money, and then parents who have struggled a little bit have kids that are more aware of it? And
well, I look at Dave Ramsey's kids are some of the most grounded, humble kids I've ever met in my life. And they're just people of character and of integrity. And I've also met rich kids who are spoiled, rotten, entitled brats. And so I think it's
really
more
just
about
correlated to the people.
Yeah,
and
it's
their
more about how you
personalities.
raise them and what you put in them versus what you leave to them. And there's always those trust fund kids who are just raised. But Dave Ramsey raised his kids with such a work ethic that it's like, you're going to have to work twice as hard because Ramsey's your last name.
Right.
And people are waiting to point the finger and go, wow, they just got handed that. They've earned everything.
Do you have any observations of a character trait that you come across successful people? Like, one of the things I've read was people that are millionaires tend to exhibit the ability to delay gratification.
Ooh.
Was there
Like
something
marshmallow test stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, was there
Yes,
anything
I
that
love the
you
marshmallow
found
test.
that
Well, we did our millionaire study. That's been famously quoted, where we surveyed 10,000 millionaires. And, living on less than you make, that's a huge part of it. Delayed gratification is a huge part of it. One of the most fascinating ones was 97% of people in that study believe that they controlled their financial destiny. And so it made me think about belief in a different way. When I was like, what you believe about yourself and your future is a self-fulfilling prophecy. So if you believe you'll always struggle with money, well, you're probably always going to struggle with money. And if you believe, like, while inflation is out of control in the housing market, and who's in the White House, if you just believe, like, I'm in control of what I can control, you're going to be okay. But when you resign yourself to be like, I'm just a cog in the wheel, man, working for the man, that's how you stay middle class forever.
That's probably one of the biggest contributions you two could make on YouTube also, would be to teach people that it's not just about politics that are out of your control, but it's about your own financial decision making.
Yeah, which is, it's not the fun news to deliver to someone. To
Yeah,
be
but
like,
you have a
hey,
platform for it, and
you're
you
the
can lead the
problem and you're
world."
the solution. Like, everyone wants a different solution. They want the
Right.
government to fix the student loan
Yeah,
problem.
but you think they would
you know?
like to be empowered, right? I mean, like, who
You
doesn't
would
want to be
think.
like, oh, wait, actually, I don't have to just blame mother. Well, I guess there's the lazy aspect.
It's
that maybe you'd be
easier and
saying
more
is,
fun
like,
to blame. I have a whole section in chapter 1 where I go through, like, here's 15 things we could blame. And at the end of it, I go, like, here's the one thing you can control. And all of that, you.
Right.
Can't control the Fed and Congress and the interest rates and the housing market and inflation, but I can control the guy in the mirror and what he does with his own money and his ability to go get some of it. And so to me, that's the number one factor is the guy and the gal in the mirror. And Dave always jokes, if we can get control of that person, they can be skinny and rich. And at one time on the Ramsey Show, I told
and
Dave, well, Dave, you're 1 for 2. And then my filter was not working that day when I said that to Dave Ramsey.
You think there's more people with six packs or more people that are millionaires in the U.S.?
Ooh, that's a good question. I'm going to go millionaires. I feel like 6-packs are harder than ever these days.
Harder than ever?
Yeah, in America.
days.
In America.
In America.
I think it's easier to be a millionaire than to have a 6-pack. I'm living proof of
probably, yeah.
that.
Maybe that was maybe during the Depression.
That's true.
A little bit easier for the
Well,
six-pack.
I mean, he
than
dropped
the
his
millionaire.
workout routine, and then I was like, no, I can't do that. He was like, it's 90 degrees, and we do all these HIIT workouts. I was like, I'm out. You lost me at
I'm out.
90 degrees.
And for that reason, I'm out.
And yes, for Shark Tank, I would not be investing in that business. That's
Oh
fun.
my gosh.
So it sounds like you don't, but what is your thoughts on international investments? Just
Ooh.
making sure that you have some diversity in
I mean,
different economies?
This has been Dave's take for 30 years, and it's put a quarter of your investments in the international side. And while those have been underperforming for a long time, the idea is if the American economy takes a hit, it'll be balanced out by the international economy. And so, it's one of those things where it's not working out right now, and it hasn't been for a while, but we still believe it's still a wise thing to do long term.
So you're exposed to international markets.
So you're exposed to some of that.
Why do you think he was so wrong on that for so many years?
I don't know. I mean, the U.S. economy is just so freaking strong. As much as we want to hate on it, we're still one of the strongest economies out there, and we cannot be stopped, it seems.
Yeah, it almost makes me wonder if the world doesn't work completely on free market principles, whereas like inside of America maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Andrei should have a hot take on this to help educate me on why international has been underperforming, because we still rely heavily on international, markets and economies and technology, and for our
because
global
so much of the
production.
global economy depends on the U.S. economy as the leader anyway, and we set interest rates. We have the world reserve currency, and so over time, I just don't think you'll have any other countries that will overtake the U.S.
So you don't like the idea of 25% going into international?
Not really. I not that I don't.
You're going mostly S&P.
I'm 100%.
Which I think you'll be just fine.
Yeah, I think that's more the Warren Buffett approach. That's what he just says. I just listen to old wise guys.
Yep.
That's
R.I.P. Charlie Munger.
Yeah, he was great.
One of the greats.
Yeah. Did you follow his stuff at all?
I just followed him and Warren. I just enjoyed their conversations.
Yeah.
I think first of all, they're very entertaining.
Yeah.
But there's so much wisdom there, and they're weirdly aligned with the Ramsey principles of just keeping it boring, keeping it simple. Obviously, they're in a different stratosphere when it comes to wealth building. That we're not running hedge funds over here, the average person. But there's a lot of wisdom. Like they're not really. I mean, what Warren Buffett said about crypto has stuck with me, and I quote it in the book in the crypto section. But he said, "I wouldn't give you $25 for all the crypto in the world because what would I do with it?
Right.
It produces nothing." And so I get what he was saying there. Is whereas a single stock even is tied to a company producing something. Crypto largely has been hype and meme coins, and there's some utility coins out there now, but largely it's just been like an MLM style,
a lot of it,
hype beast mentality. Just
agree.
like Andrei told me to get in on this coin, so I feel like I should, and if I do it and I tell my buddy to do it, then it's going to make the coin go up in value. So unfortunately, and there's a lot of fraud and schemes in crypto, and there is across the financial spectrum, but crypto was just like primed for that kind of behavior, it seems.
I would agree
as an
with
emerging technology.
I would agree with that.
Which is sad.
Yeah, Bitcoin's more of a commodity, but
and the amount of people dude, we took this story, this guy, losing millions because he lost his Bitcoin, his crypto.
His private key?
Yeah, he lost his private key, and it was like on a laptop that he couldn't get into, and like that is so wild to me that like that alone you could lose millions.
Sure.
That's cash.
Well, let me ask you this.
Yeah.
If you were me and you were doing this YouTube stuff and you weren't sure if it's going to be around forever, but you want to build some kind of business perhaps that's based on it loosely or otherwise, such that if I don't do YouTube, I could still make somewhat of an income, passive or otherwise, from said business. Do you have any ideas?
Ooh. Well, we're big at Ramsey on being platform agnostic. And so while we're always going to be on every platform that will have us, we also never hedge all of our bets on that. We don't put all of our eggs in a basket. And so, for example, we build our own email lists because we want to have some level of control over communicating with our audience. So if a social media platform goes down, or if Twitter ceases to exist and becomes X and no one uses it anymore, we're like, oh crap, we built a huge platform on Twitter or Vine, and now all those people are gone. And so we always want to drive them into our world, even though it may start on YouTube or podcast. And so that's what we've done really well. And so we have email lists of millions of people that we can talk to, and we have their information because they'll purchase a book from our website or go through Financial Peace University, or they're a user of EveryDollar. And so I think driving people into your world, and like Graham has done a good job of this with his newsletter.
Yeah.
He owns that email list, and I think that's really wise to do versus just putting everything in on YouTube, and they change one algorithm and your advertising model just changed drastically, and that decimated your income. So I think it's wise to be diversified and have a course over here and an advertiser here and be on TikTok and YouTube. But I also think it's wise to go all in on your thing and not feel like you have to be doing everything.
Right.
So owning your audience in that way of like an email list, but also knowing what you're good at. So like we talked about this, you're like, I'm not really trying to go big on TikTok.
Right.
You could do really well over there, but it would also steal your attention away from other things.
Right.
And so knowing what your strengths are and going all in on that while making sure that you don't lose your audience on one platform.
Cool. So step one, get a newsletter.
Newsletter.
Gotta do that.
Hey, you're so smart. I mean, who wouldn't subscribe to the Andre newsletter?
Exactly. I got to transcribe all
Leadership.
my scripts. You have no idea.
Andre Leadership, the new
That's right. Andre Leadership.
newsletter.
That's right.
Nice throwback.
Do you have any cool nuggets or stories to share, either from your book or from the last decade of your life where you're building wealth that stand out to you?
Ooh, I do share one. I have the last chapter of the book is called Generosity is Joy. Because like we talked about, it's the most fun you can have with money. I think we all really just want more joyful lives with less anxiety. And I share the story of this couple that came into our lobby to do their debt-free scream, Amir and Connie. And they had paid off $986,000 of debt, including their mortgage, in 10 years. And they came into their debt-free scream, and they had their kids with them. And Amir's from the Middle East. His kids were about my age. Obviously, they're the same first-generation Americans. They're standing next to their parents, and Amir says, hey, Dave, before we do the scream, since we have our kids here with us, we've been keeping a secret from them, and we wanted to let them know we're debt-free, but also we've paid off their mortgages.
Wow.
And the entire lobby is in tears. We're like ugly crying. And I remember thinking to myself, that's the kind of legacy I want to leave. Like, not one of financial ruin and burden, and the parents pass away, and the kids are left carrying a mess of crap that their parents never dealt with, but instead being like, the way he set up his own kids for success and generational wealth was so inspiring to me that it has stuck with me as just one example of like the things you can do by following this proven plan, by staying debt-free, by leveraging your greatest wealth building tool, your income, instead of leveraging debt. And so that one has stuck with me as a great model of something I want to be able to do for my kids. Not saying I will do it. Mia, if you're watching, you shouldn't be. You're 4 months old. Why are you watching YouTube and podcasts? But that's something I think is underrated, is setting your kids up for generational wealth and creating privilege that you wish you had.
Yeah. That's amazing. Love it.
How about you guys?
Oh, geez. I'm not that prepared for that answer.
No, I could. Okay, so can I do a different question, or do you want to answer?
Go for it.
Okay, so this is just kind of chewing on me. So I was like playing that in my head. But do you think the government would fall apart, or would it work really well if the U.S. government only spent what it earned and didn't take on debt every? If
This
they,
was a hot
if they
take.
followed the exact same plan.
Like if we could pay off our trillions of dollars in debt.
That's a great question.
Like if we
yeah.
only spent the money we earned from taxes and from, I guess, GDP, or just taxes, yeah. If we just spent
Well,
the money.
I think we would become the most powerful nation in the world with so much confidence because we don't owe anyone money. And so you just reduce your overall risk as a country when it's all in your control. Now, I don't know what would happen. Would the economy fall apart if we lost debt? Maybe. I think we could survive without Capital One and Sallie Mae personally. But, you know, the U.S. is largely a debt-based economy, for better and more for worse. For the average consumer, it's a whole lot worse. So I don't know as far as the economic side. You could probably make a great video on that. Have you done that before?
Yeah.
What would happen if the U.S. became
done that?
debt-free?
We did cover it, yeah.
What was
And
your hot take on that?
My hot take is you have to give me at least 1,000 lifetimes to figure that out.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think it'll happen in our lifetime. I think it could happen, and I do think people think like the economy would fall apart and consumer spending would. I think if people had their income at their disposal, we would still spend. We would probably spend more.
Because it feels to me like, I think, is it Norway that has their sovereign wealth fund that's mostly making more in dividends than they have citizens? So it's like they seem like they're in a really powerful position. But if you don't export your debt to a country like China, there might be more reason to go to war and a few other things. So it might be
That's
more
true.
of a geopolitical issue, but it seems financially like it.
But I'm just thinking,
Probably
like
would make
mathematically,
sense,
if you have $1 trillion in savings making 5%, or $1 trillion in debt where you owe 5%,
Yeah,
like
it's true. I mean, think
as
how
a
much-
country-
think of how much we have to
But
pay.
where
for
it gets
borrowed money.
complicated is like comparing this stuff to like a personal credit card or a personal finance
Yes.
situation. Is that as a country it's different because majority of the debt that we owe is to ourselves. So it's a very different scenario, and also because the U.S. can
Different
export
mechanisms.
U.S. dollars to other countries, it's different, and that we can really use our debt to our advantage. But
do you think
I
the
don't
U.S.
think-
dollar would become stronger though if we were completely debt free? What would that do to our currency?
well,
Would it
Almost
affect
make
the
it, like,
value?
unusably strong, maybe. I think
Because we've been printing a lot of money.
having a strong dollar is actually not a benefit. It's actually
Yeah, you
well, it
want it weak.
depends on who you're asking. It's better for the consumer.
Ask
it's
the
worse.
Greeks.
Ask if you're asking the corporations, it's worse for them. We want a weaker dollar because when we sell products overseas and corporations sell, when they convert dollars, we should convert more dollars, not less dollars.
Oh.
So it makes our products. Did you hear that? He's like,
Rito has thoughts about that.
He's talking about this again.
Rito fell asleep as you
Rito
started
runs
talking about.
runs this place.
When the U.S. has a weaker dollar, it's better because we can price our products more competitively. When there's a stronger dollar, does that make sense?
Okay, I see where you're going with
So
this.
if Apple has to sell an iPhone, it has to be whatever it costs. But if our dollar's
$1,500,
right, exactly.
But
whatever
don't you
it
think
is now.
corporations would just adapt? Like, would things just cost more at that point?
They can, but what they can't do is that other countries that we sell to, which is a substantial source of their revenue, cannot. And so they can't just drop the price of their products and have it be different in different
They'd
countries.
be okay. I mean, they'd
be okay. They'd be fine.
But maybe they
But all
just
I'm
stop
saying
buying
is-
from us, and then the things that make things would move away
All
from
I'm
the
saying
US.
is the S&P 500's performance might not be the same historical as it was before.
Yeah.
With an uberly
I
strong
needed
dollar.
to ask you about the S&P. So we
Yeah.
get a lot of flack for being like, you could get an average annual return of 10 to 12%.
Yeah.
But that's the historical average return of the S&P 500, and people are like angry that we're saying this.
Yeah, because they're
Is
like,
that
You're
not
not taking
true?
into account inflation.
Yeah,
Right,
like what
sure.
is the deal behind that?
yeah, what's
Yeah.
the real percent?
okay, what I figured out for my personal videos is the magic key word that you must say to appease those people is to say inflation adjusted when you give those numbers. And if you say something like 6 to 8% inflation adjusted, then those people will just shut up.
What
Is
is
that
their
what it is?
obsession with inflation adjusted? Because like, well, the dollar isn't really worth a dollar.
Well, remember how we said we lined up all these reasons for what you can blame?
Yeah.
For a lot of people, it's inflation. So when you tell people like, hey, it's really great to build wealth and to become a millionaire, one of the excuses people have is like, well, what's $1 million going to be
Oh my
worth
God,
in 30
that's my
years?
favorite comment. My favorite comment, and you know they don't have $1 million
And they don't,
net worth.
right.
They're so broke. And they're like, $1 million is nothing.
Right.
I'm like, it ain't nothing to me.
No, yeah, exactly. I'd rather have $1 million 30 years from now than nothing, for sure.
Well, and the other piece is if you follow the Ramsey plan and you don't have any debt, you don't have any payments, like $1 million in a Roth account goes a long way.
Goes a long way, yeah.
With no payments.
Right.
And so that's why we encourage Roth. Like, you can argue Roth versus traditional all day
Sure,
long.
sure.
But to me, I don't want to have to worry about what taxes are going to be 30 years from now when I retire.
Right.
I just want to know if there's $2 million in that account, I can spend $2 million and Uncle Sam ain't touching it.
Right.
So that makes me feel good.
I
going
would
into
just
retirement.
experiment with saying inflation adjusted. See what your response is.
Gosh,
I
I don't know if I
changed
could
it?
do that. I don't know if I could make the
those
troll. Yeah,
people, those
appeasing the trolls is not
trolls.
high on my list.
It's
I don't know.
11%,
It's not that you're
adjusted
appeasing the
for
trolls.
inflation.
It's that when you say it, people are like, "Wow, thank you for being considerate of, me."
But it's
and
still 10 to 12%.
it is
That's
still
the
tw-
actual number. We
Right.
can talk about inflation adjusted all
Yeah,
all
but that's
day
like when
long.
movies are like made $1 billion, but movies were different when Gone with the Wind came out.
Well,
Like,
you know how they
gotta
say,
it.
you know how they say like real inflation or like real interest rates. And when people say that, it's like they take into account inflation minus interest
Oh,
rates.
You know, my analogy
what
is
so that's very
when the temperature is
macroeconomic.
70 degrees, but with the wind chill, it's 60.
Right.
You're like,
exactly.
okay, but like the temperature's still 70.
Right,
Like,
right.
yeah, but really, it feels like
That's a
60.
good point. Yeah.
Like, well, it's not about your feelings.
Well, you add humidity in and the wind.
That's
It's
a great
different
point.
temperature.
Sure.
That actually helps me. Thank you for that. You
Yeah.
got me to that weatherman analogy, and I appreciate that.
Yeah.
If nothing else, if you got
if
nothing else in this
yeah,
conversation,
the weatherman analogy.
that's what you're
Your
here
next
for.
video, the weatherman analogy.
It's hot content. Is the content usually this outstanding on this show?
All the time.
Every episode.
Gosh, how do you guys do it? And that's with me. Imagine like a really good guest.
Imagine a really good guest.
Has Graham Stephan been on?
Oh, he's the
Actually,
first
not in
guest.
this format.
Oh yeah.
I beat you, Graham. You're right down the street.
He was the first guest, but yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
What do you think of inflation? What do you think is going to happen next year? Do you have any thoughts on like the market or?
Oh man.
Not that it matters at the end of the day. I know it's not going to change your strategy, but give me a quick like minute.
I think it will cool down. I think what the Fed has been trying to do is largely been painful to watch, and I think it will cool down. I think everything will kind of normalize in the next year or two. This is all just a prediction, and I also think I am probably one of the people that's least worried about it. And it's not like a flex of like I'm doing so well financially. I just truly think when you don't have debt, you don't have payments, you have an emergency fund, what inflation is doing and the cost of eggs and housing and all of that stuff, it just matters less.
Right.
As far as my day-to-day goes. Now, I feel for the consumers, and I especially feel for those that want to be homeowners. That, like, my heart goes out to those people. Watching the housing market double in the past few years in Nashville, is great for me, but like it sucks for my coworker who's like, I wanted to buy a house and it went from a $400,000 house to a $600,000 house. What do I do now? And so I don't think home prices are going to decline. I think they've stabilized in a big way. And we told people long ago, real estate market's not going to crash. And we were right. There was no crash. Things just stabilized, and people asking for insane asking prices didn't get what they wanted. And so people thought that was a crash because they went, look, the price got slashed down $100,000. I'm like, it was never worth that much to begin with. So I think interest rates we've seen a tick. It's been, a little glimmer of hope when you see the interest rates get knocked down 0.5%. I hope they continue to do so for future homeowners' sake, because I think it's good for homeowners to get in the game. And I think home ownership is a huge key to building wealth that's underrated. Just your primary home getting paid off as a huge part of your net worth is amazing. And so I hope that it changes. I hope things calm down. And I also think we need a reality check for our consumer spending, because consumer spending has continued to ramp up through all of this, which tells me people are either doing better than they say they are, or they're just going deeper into debt. And I think it's a little bit of both.
I guess that's what the news is calling doom spending.
Yes, they're like, YOLO, let's go to Europe. Who cares? Nothing matters anymore.
Yeah, everything sucks.
Put it on the card, put it on black, let's go.
So what you're saying is all in on Bitcoin.
All in on Bitcoin.
That's the overall message we're getting from
Listen,
this.
if you gave me $100, if I gave you $100 and you were like, hey, I'll invest this for you into crypto and I'll turn it into 1,000, I'd be like, go for it.
Right.
Merry Christmas, Andre. Here's $100. You could keep half.
If you have true
I would let you
money.
keep half.
Yeah.
How's that?
I'm starting a fund right now.
Please. I would do it if you started a crypto coin. I thought about starting Camel Coin for fun, just to see, but then I was worried that it would actually take off.
Right.
And it would prove my thesis wrong.
Sure.
Yeah.
And then people would be so mad.
I did not want to touch the crypto stuff. The NFTs, all the people that were making their own stuff.
Well, NFTs, I always had even more strong feelings against, for good reason, as we know now.
Yeah.
It was, everyone got scammed. The only people making money were people minting them and selling them.
Right.
Everyone else largely got screwed.
Well, there you have it.
Do you have any NFTs, either of you?
As a content creator, I have to experiment with NFTs. So that's what I did it with that context. Because when things are popping off, I don't have to, but it helps to be like, why is this
real life
exploding?
experience?
Why is this going up? Like, okay, cool. Let's up the bet. Let's up the stakes on these videos. Let's see what actually happens. But before I buy any of them, I would say, like, you have no business buying any of this stuff unless you've taken care of your 401k, your IRAs, you're invested in real estate, you have stocks. Like, this is not
just
an
blow
investment
money,
strategy. This is.
I need to share. I want to see what you think about this on my hot take. So in the investing trap section, because it was so like, I was like, I don't want people to fall asleep. So I did a hot take for each one.
All right.
NFTs are a useless flex of, quote, ownership with the illusion of an investment.
Sure, I can see that.
Dang,
Yeah.
I'm burned up.
Hot
I'm burned
take.
up.
Hot take.
Is that fair to say?
It's fair to say now, but I feel like in retrospect, it's easier to think that now. And I know a lot of people are like,
I was saying it's a scam way back then.
and sure, you did, but
Yeah, I'm not
the
one of
whole
those, I
thing
told
was-
you so. I don't think
the whole
that's
thing
fun.
is like the idea behind NFTs. I could tell you why people are buying them. It's because the metaverse at the time was taking off, right? Or it was this idea
And now
of
the
like,
metaverse is a joke.
and now it's a joke. But it was for a hot second there, like Facebook changed its name to Meta, and for a second there, we were like, wait, are we gonna live in VR? And like, is this gonna be the new thing? Is this what Bitcoin is?
Have you
Is
seen
it-
people wear VR goggles?
It looks ridiculous, but yeah, I mean, I have a pair and I like never use them, but for a second there,
Because
there
you
was
enjoy
that
reality.
a little bit more.
If
Yeah.
your reality is so terrible that you have to escape to virtual reality, just change your reality.
But I feel like
how I
our
feel.
kids would probably live potentially in those VR goggles. Like, I don't know. It seems ridiculous now,
Sure.
but maybe in the future.
We all thought Nintendo Wii was going to be the thing because we could bowl with like.
Hey,
It's
for a lot of
just like
people,
really bowling.
it
still
was
hits.
it was my life. But the whole idea behind NFTs is that they were supposed to be the Rolexes, the flexes of this digital world.
Yeah.
That's all it was. So yeah, in some sense, it is a ridiculous, pointless flex. But
Thank
that
you
is
for
not
your
to say
honesty.
that is not to say that it can't make money. In the same
Sure.
way that you could say Rolexes are a pointless flex. Why do you need a $30,000 watch when you can buy a $5 watch, a G-Shock, or whatever it is?
Yeah.
And just wear that. So it's
The thing is, I can't screenshot your Rolex. You know what I mean? Like NFTs are just like, all right, bro. Like how is this a flex?
No, but we're
You know what
talking
I mean?
about utility, right? So what's the utility of a watch to tell time? You can't screenshot, but you can also print the Mona Lisa and hang it up on your wall. That doesn't make it a Mona Lisa.
Yes.
That's the idea.
It's like I got the OG. And
Right.
It's worth more because it's the OG.
Technically, yeah.
But when it's digital, you have to admit it loses something in
Well,
the digital world.
If it did, I don't think Bitcoin would have value.
If the Mona Lisa was a JPEG,
sure,
people wouldn't be showing up in museums to go see it.
that's true. That's probably true.
So that's kind of the
That's probably true. But who's to say that 100 years from now, the first NFT that wasn't created at first wouldn't be that Mona Lisa?
there may be a museum of NFTs.
Imagine
one
100
day.
years from now, in the Louvre, there's like a picture frame. It's like some 1 millimeter thin screen or some projection. You're like, that's the first NFT that was ever
written
created.
into the blockchain. On
It
this
seems
date.
ridiculous to us now, but when you're trying to project into
If
the
my
future,
kid paid a fee to go into a museum where there was a framed NFT, I would think we've lost our minds. But
That's
yes, that's a possibility.
that's a fair take. All
It's a
I'm saying is
possibility.
it's subjective. Some people pay $100 to go see classic cars in some
Some
museum,
people
and it's
pay
like-
to see Nickelback. You know what I
Exactly,
mean? Like there's
exactly.
investments I wouldn't make.
Exactly.
Quebec's got the raw end of the deal for the.
I'm
the
not
record.
trying to defend NFTs as great investments, by the way. I'm just trying to think optimistically.
Well, you're a very
about,
open-minded guy, and I
Right.
think that's why people love you.
about
you know?
I'm trying to be optimistic about what it could have been.
I exist to just piss people off. I come from the Dave Ramsey
Like
Club.
when it's proven to be safe.
You are
he'll talk
Switzerland.
about it.
As
I'm trying to
Switzerland
be
in the financial
Switzerland. I'm
world.
trying to be excited and try to understand people's perspectives, even if they end up being wrong. But I think it's easier to be like,
Say what you will about Andrei, but he hasn't been wrong. Have there been times where you're like, dang it, I was so wrong on that, and I doubled down and I was like, this is what's gonna happen, and it went the opposite route?
No, I don't really.
Because
Like,
you don't tend to make absolute statements either, which helps
I've
you
never
out.
made a prediction really that I'm like, here's my prediction, and I've never tried to convince people to buy anything or invest in anything. I don't care if people buy into Dogecoin or Bitcoin or real estate. It's like, if that's your thing, do it. If it works for you, here's mine, and here's how I do it. And I'm not saying this is the best way. And I think that transparency is what inspired me to get into investing in personal finance. And so by providing that transparency, but also making it entertaining and fun and hopefully educational, that's all it is. It's not trying to prognosticate the future. It's
Ooh.
just
$10 word there.
Yeah.
Very impressive.
I like it too. I learned it the other day.
Just the other
kidding.
day. Wow.
So he's
Yeah.
got on a cue card right off camera.
Yeah.
It's like, make sure to use
Word of the day.
procrastinate or whatever that is.
Do you think having Dave and people like him in so much influential position and so much power, has he said anything that either he's regretted or like he's maybe like, I don't know how to phrase this
Sure,
question.
after
It's
all
more
those
like,
years, there's learning and correcting that has to
yeah, like
happen.
things that maybe he's done that he's like, I wish I didn't do that.
Oh, 100%. And
Yeah.
he learns from those mistakes, and you know, if you make the mistake twice, then you're an idiot. So he learns from those, and over 30 years of doing this and being in live radio, I mean, the amount of things that are
Yeah.
just like, it's out there. And now
Yeah.
with YouTube, everything we do is on the internet forever, instantly.
Right.
And someone can record it or screen grab it. And so there's a filter there that we all try to have, because I represent this place too, and I represent the team members that work there and our fans, and like we are a trust brand.
Yeah.
The whole thing is built on trust, and so we don't want to lose that. So Dave will say things that's controversial, but if he'll stand by it and he believes it. But there's also things where the way that it was said, you know, the tonality, because of a mood, a meeting could have gone bad, and then
Yeah.
you're on the air in an hour, and you're like,
So I didn't
crap.
think about that. Compared to I guess like an average YouTuber who's kind of representing themselves only, you could hurt an empire if you.
Yeah. Well, and Dave's also
started to crack
CEO.
it.
Like, he's running this huge company.
Yeah.
This like $300 million company while being an on-air personality 3 hours a day. Like,
Right.
that's a lot to carry. And so he is a beast in that way. And, you know, we're part of the succession plan, us Ramsey personalities, to try
Right.
to, you know, 6 of us trying to carry the torch forward to the next generation.
That's a
and
good point,
Keep
yeah.
this going long after he's gone. But the dude will not quit. I mean, I truly think he said he's going to be on air until our team has to strip him off air because he's gone like totally senile or something.
Right.
Until he's gone full Biden, he will stay on the air.
So the intervention happens.
I hope someday I'm
he
lucky
sees us.
enough to go on your guys' podcast and do a real intro, like the ones I fake. And I want to start it in a fake way, so people are like, oh, here's another dumb skit. And then I actually walk across the line and be like, no,
That
I'm
would be
actually
amazing.
here. Like,
If you're willing to come to Nashville, I'll see what I can do. Pull
that
some
would
strings.
be cool.
I can
Yeah.
at least tell
Send
Dave,
an
hey,
email.
Andrei's a good guy. That's
Oh,
the most I
gosh.
can do.
That's
Great
too
liar.
much.
But
man.
you're always welcome to my YouTube channel as well.
All right, George. Thank you so much for coming by. Where can people buy the book?
Absolutely. So Breaking Free from Broke is the name of the book. You can get it from our store, RamseySolutions.com/store, or, Amazon, wherever you buy your books. It's out there. And I'm really proud of this. The audiobook is especially cool if you enjoy podcasts. We did a little produced element to it. So it's got some sound design, some cool effects. I did some original music for the intros and outros for each
That's
chapter.
cool. Did
And
you read it as well yourself?
And I read it myself.
That's great.
We couldn't hire anyone to nail it, to nail the
Not
millennial
like you.
snark.
Not the way
And so this is the book. We called it The Ultimate Guide to More Money and Less Stress. It, of course, covers my story going from broke to millionaire. I uncover the traps of this financial system, credit scores, credit cards, student loans, auto loans, investing traps, mortgages, consumerism, and then I show people how to break free and have peace and joy and self-control and all the things that we really want in life, but money's an obstacle too. And
Right.
so I hope this helps a lot of people.
Is there a coupon code?
But if you DM me, I'll see what I can do. If your listeners are like, give us a deal, because this is 20. If you get it before January 16th, you get all of the pre-order bonuses for free. So the audiobook's free, the ebook's free.
Oh, that's cool.
A video lesson, an online event, 3 months of every dollar before or after you buy it is on me. So
And then where can people find your YouTube channel?
George Kamel with a K on YouTube. And on Instagram at George Kamel with a K. Would love to hear from you guys if you checked out this episode.
Heck yeah.
All right. Thank you so
man.
much.
Love it. Thanks for
Appreciate it.
having me,
It was
guys.
great.
This is
That was a
awesome.
fun
I love
combo.
this
Thank you, thank you.
Kardashian couch vibe. we have
Kardashian?
going
Oh my
on.
god.
That's not what I was going for.
Burn it to the ground.
My wife watches a lot of Kardashians,
Does she
and this
really?
is the dream couch they all sit on and just like
It
lounge
is
on.
true.
So
It's
it was fun,
luxury
guys.
life.
It was fun sitting pretzel style with you guys and talking nerdy financial shop.
Thank
so
you.
thanks
Yeah.
for having me.
Yeah,
Namaste.
man. Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Sweet.
Now I know why you're so swole. Just holding this mic.